So, Foster and Hamilton followed the small creature for nearly half a day. It was rounding noon by the time the creature's pace began to slow, as they were beginning to enter a swamp-like region, the ground under their feet becoming softer with every passing step, their feet beginning to sink into the moist earth. The smell of mold and mildew, the slosh of their feet within the mud. But the creature seemed unfazed by this, simply continuing its forward movement, until it came to a stop finally.
"Yes, we're here now,"
it said as it turned around, looking to Foster and Hamilton.
"Before we enter, a few things to remember. The hag may look old, but does not mean she is not strong. Possess exceptional power, she does. Unlike anything demons know of, hag can be temperamental, so be polite, or she may claim you in whatever way she wishes. Be wary, Foster. Be careful of what you say and how you say it. Hag can be easily offended,"
Picky said as it extended one of its clawed hands outward towards the air beside it. And then, as if by some magic beyond their comprehension, Pinky simply pulled very gently, and it was as if Pinky was opening the curtain of the world, as if the world itself was simply a tapestry which could be moved aside, a curtain that one could tie a knot off in and gaze beyond. And there, in the space where Pinky had moved this tapestry of the world, beyond it, they could see still a swamp, but it was ever more different than what they could see around them. There, in the center of the swamp, lied a cottage formed from a tree. It seemed very quaint. Though large in size, it seemed almost homey. Bushes outside of the swamp covered landscapes surrounding the cottage, bearing colorful fruit. Small, strange creatures roaming about in the midst. Nothing like Foster had ever seen before. The cottage itself formed within the tree, having windows and a large door. The windows affixed with potted plants of once again a strange and uncommon nature. Fireflies glittering about in the air, and a small waft of smoke coming from a chimney that protruded from the tree.
"Welcome to the home of the hag. Enter should you wish to fulfill the deal."
Foster took a deep breath, trying to calm herself for a moment, prepare herself for what she might be facing. Hamilton, on the other hand, didn't appear impressed at all. "Very well, let's continue," he said, without any hesitation, as he began to walk through the drawn curtain of the world, through into the dwelling of the hag.
"Well, wait,"
Foster said, as she began to follow behind.
"Don't you think you're in a bit of a rush? We might need to be careful,"
she said, as she closed the distance between them. "We have no time for that nonsense. If we needed to be slow, your little friend probably should have told us," he said, finally seeing Picky enter the dwelling himself, allowing the curtain of the world to close behind him, before skittering out in front.
"You follow. Hag inside. Hag always inside.
Pinky said, smiling, baring his sharp little teeth, his wrinkled and withered face, leaving much to be desired, as he began to skitter towards the large doorway. The doorway itself was enormous. In terms of proportion, it seemed to be shaped like a normal doorway that one would see on a house, except the size was off. Nearly 20 foot tall, the knob was enormous. Without any hesitation, Picky quickly approached the door, lifting both hands and beginning to slam on the very bottom of it, which was about as far as he could reach, making as loud of a bang as he could, which on the size of the door didn't amount to much, but it was audible. They surmised that whoever was inside could most likely hear it. A few moments passed as they awaited outside of that massive doorway, before finally they heard noise. It was the turning of the doorknob, the creaking of the wood that comprised the door as it began to open. And as it did, an absolutely massive figure stood overhead, nearly 17 foot tall, easily. Its body was enormously extended, its limbs appearing long, exceptionally so, as if most of the length of its body was simply its limbs. But the legs and the length of the arms was about all they could really see, as the body itself seemed to be cloaked, covered in a dull gray robe of sorts that hid most of its physical body. Over what they could only assume was its head, the cloak wrapped, forming a hood. Beyond the hood, only long strands of gray hair hung low, nearly 7 foot long, simply dangling from outside of the hood. And beyond that, they could see nothing. It was like darkness, a void, all except for 2 brightly glowing eyes, each a different color, one green, one gold, but both glowing vibrantly.
Hello.
Picky said, staring up at the massive entity.
Picky, bring guests. Guests won't make deal. Ask hag for favor. Pinky, my little friend,
the massive figure replied, the voice sounding like that of an exceptionally old woman, as it reached down with one of its hands, long distended fingers, with skin that seemed to cling to the bone, curled fingernails that were razor sharp at the end of each finger. It simply reached down and rubbed a single fingertip across the top of Picky's head.
It's been so long since you've paid me a visit, and you bring guests. How nice. It does get so boring out here all alone. Come, enter. We can have a very nice talk. I haven't had one of those in a while,
she said, opening the creaky door and stepping to the side, her extraordinarily long arms gesturing a welcome to the troop, as Picky skittered in without question, followed shortly by Hamilton, who seemed to be unshaken by the massive physical form of this entity. Fosta, on the other hand, was having trouble containing herself. She couldn't help but have an exceptional feeling of worry, being extremely deterred by the presence of this massive being, and exceptionally concerned about what might transpire within the walls of this cottage in the swamp.